What's up, sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Opinions Podcast. I am your host, as always, Alex Cuesta. With me today is someone who, not going to lie, pretty damn shocked that he even agreed to come on, but I'm actually really pumped that he decided to come on. He's someone that I used to listen to and always enjoyed listening to him on the radio. He's Robin Lundberg, host of SI Now for Sports Illustrated and the Robin Lundberg Show on CBS Sports Radio. What's up, Robin?
What's up, man? How are you?
Good. Really, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm a great person.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to argue that here.
I mean, like, it's pretty tough to refute. Like, the evidence is overwhelming at this point. So, no problem.
I really, really appreciate that. So, we're going to get right down to it. I used to listen to you, actually, when you were on ESPN Radio. You were with Ryan Ruocco. That's when I first heard you, and I enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah. That show came about, man. We did that for a few years. It came about really organically. I was working on his – it was his morning show at the time, and I was producing it, and we just had a nice rapport, and it sort of grew from there. We did early mornings, and then at one point did early mornings, and then – like 10 to 11, if I remember correctly, some weird time slot shift. And then we got moved into the afternoons. And yeah, we had a good thing going. It was, circumstances beyond our control that led to the end of that show.
Yeah, things like that happen. But now you're in a really good spot with Sports Illustrated, with CBS Sports Radio. I tend to listen to a lot of CBS Sports Radio stuff because I listen to The Fan being over here in New York. So that's always on there. And it's just, it's cool that I'm kind of living a surreal thing right here, being a fan and now talking to you. It's kind of, this is what I wanted to do, starting to get with the podcast and sports media, but it's always a little surreal to do,
Yeah, it's like when I met Jay-Z in Madison Square Garden one time.
Yeah, it's like you're a little bit shocked. It's like, oh, I'm actually talking to someone that I never thought I'd talk to in a million years.
Well, I appreciate being painted as someone who someone else would not think they would ever be talking to in a million years. That's very flattering. Thank you.
As it should be. You worked and you've made it to where you are, and you are also a big basketball guy. And that is basically what this podcast is going to center around today. It's going to be NBA heavy. It's going to be lots and lots of fun. So we're going to kick right into it. I'm going to throw you right into the fire right now. Who's coming out of the East to play for the championship?
Oh, man. Yeah, I wasn't ready for that. Because there's a lot of teams that could do it, right?
Yep.
I think I'd still slightly lean Boston right now that they've gotten it together. Basically, when you have this tie, right, who does the tie go to? The team that I've seen kind of do it. And I know Boston didn't make the finals, but they did make the Eastern Conference Finals, right? That they are theoretically a better team heading into the postseason this year than they were a year ago. But the one team that I'm a little worried about would be Milwaukee, because they've been very good this year, number one seed obviously and all that. But I'm not so sure they're not going to be kind of like the Atlanta Hawks were a few years back when they actually get to the postseason.
Yep.
And I think Giannis needs to prove himself as a shot creator. Toronto, Kawhi gives them a little bit of a different look than they've had in recent years, but I still think they could use one more playmaker. And Philadelphia, if they can add depth at the trade deadline, I actually kind of think it could be them. But as of now, I'll go with the Celtics.
Now, is Ben Simmons and his lack of perimeter shooting, even shooting past 15 feet, that really hindered them last year when they played the Celtics, because it was literally basically three guys on offense basically playing, and the Celtics were not challenged by Simmons. They played off him heavy, and they had the defensive talent on Boston to really contain a guy like Simmons.
Yeah, and it's not just Simmons, it's Embiid in that matchup as well, because Joel Embiid, that type of player is not the type of player I would choose as my 1A player. The offense can get a little predictable, but most importantly, the defense. There are certain matchups where defensively he'll be great against 90-something% of the league. But that one particular lineup that can make him get out there and try and guard in space, Boston in particular took advantage of that a year ago in the playoffs. So I think it's that they're smart enough and disciplined enough and coached well enough and talented enough and long enough defensively, where you're right, Ben Simmons, they'll force him on the perimeter. And then I think on the other end, they'll attack Joel Embiid.
Without a doubt. You said you look at a team like the Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo getting a lot of attention because he's an uber talented player. He's really expanded his game. And I think they're another team that can give Philadelphia some fits because Brook Lopez, I'm a Nets fan. I know a lot of him. He's now transitioned his game to a legitimate perimeter threat. And he can run by most big men that guard him from the perimeter. So he's another one that's going to possibly give them challenges. They have Malcolm Brogdon over there, who's just a tough, gritty player. I like the Bucks. I'm kind of with you, though. I think they're maybe a year or two away, maturity-wise, from really making that big step.
Oh, I think they need either Giannis needs to become it, or they need to, get a guard who's going to make things happen off the dribble. Right?
Eric Bledsoe's not the answer there?
I don't think so. I mean, look, Bledsoe's a nice player, but he's not consistent enough, I don't think, in that role. Where there's never been anybody who was like, oh no, Eric Bledsoe has the ball in his hand.
So is that a potential Kemba Walker destination, which I think is outside the box? No one's talked about the Milwaukee Bucks, but you add Kemba Walker to that team, and that's a completely different contender.
Totally agree. That somebody like that. And it doesn't, because you have Giannis, that player then doesn't have to be, like Kemba Walker's good, but he's not good enough as the best player on the team. Right. No. And you see that in Charlotte, but he's good enough at what he does. If he's added to a team where someone like Giannis is the best player on the team, then his skill set theoretically works in conjunction and gives them something they didn't have.
My basic X factor when talking about the East in my look is who's the best player in the East. And I think going away, it's still Kawhi Leonard. I still think he's definitely top 5 player in the NBA. If not still right up there with LeBron and Durant. And I look at Kyrie, and Kyrie is a generational, unbelievable talent. But I still think when you put up Kawhi, Antetokounmpo, Kyrie, even Simmons, Embiid, Kawhi's still the best player. So I kind of lean, especially in basketball where there's only 5 guys per team, Kawhi sets that difference. And that's why, unlike most years, I think the Raptors are going to have a much better chance of getting over that hump because they have a Kawhi Leonard.
Well, look, Kawhi's proven it in the moment, so I'm not. I do add that to the potential of the Raptors, but I don't think the gap is big enough. He very well may be the best player, but you could argue, and the gap is not large enough where I think that is going to be what separates it. I mean, you talked about Kyrie Irving is a bad man.
Unbelievable.
We talk about Simmons and B. We haven't brought up Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is arguably the best player on that team.
But he hates everybody. Robin, why does he hate everybody?
Well, I don't know exactly what makes him tick. I'll say 2 things. One, if things don't work out in Philly, clearly, you're starting to see a pattern, and Jimmy Butler has to be the problem. And I had before just sort of, he struck me as one of those super competitive guys that doesn't necessarily jive with everybody. But
Kobe was super competitive. Michael was super competitive. And this never came up with either of them, and as negative as it is with Jimmy.
Well, Kobe used to get people shipped out of town with the Lakers. But my point is, I think that last story was a little bit sensationalized. The new trend in some of these stories, particularly from a very famous NBA reporter, is to take a nugget of information and write a story around it, but pull the most sensational spin of it. Like, for instance, remember the Magic Johnson, Luke Walton thing from earlier this year?
Yeah.
I mean, what was that story? What did it really say if you read the story? It said Magic Johnson and Luke Walton met. Maybe there was a moment of, a little bit of spirited conversation. But if that headline had said Luke Walton meets with boss, it wouldn't be that controversial, right?
Not at all. But I think that's the 24-hour sports media that we live in. It's like every other 24-hour media cycle that, especially with social media, there has to be a story, period.
No doubt. Look, I work in the business, but the Jimmy Butler story was the same way. It was,
Yeah.
I mean, like, I just read that apparently the context of that was Brett Brown was running a meeting and asked at the end of the meeting if anybody saw anything on the film or had any feedback, and Jimmy Butler gave feedback.
And I think he looks at himself as a leader of that team. So I don't see that would be like LeBron sitting there and standing up in a film session and calling out half the team. People are going to be like, yeah, it's just LeBron. He's the best player. Jimmy Butler is the best player on that team.
Well, I mean, I think it's an argument. I'll put it this way. When we're talking about the playoffs and it's the fourth quarter and there's 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter and it's a close game, I trust Jimmy Butler more than both those other guys.
Or it's the last minute, and who do you want trading buckets with the other best player? I want Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So, like, he has, I mean, that kind of ability. If he does burn the bridge, then at that point he's, like, becoming toxic, and you have to say, all right, give up on the idea of him, being part of a good situation. But I followed LeBron's career very closely, obviously, and when you're watching him in the playoffs, like you see other teams, other players earn some respect, and Jimmy Butler was like that on the Bulls. He wanted to win those games, and that was a good team. And there was a time he was the best player on that team, and he competes on both ends. So he has my respect as a hooper, that's for sure.
Without a doubt. So we're speaking of all these great players, bringing up Antetokounmpo, Kawhi, even Kyrie. But I'm going to expand that a little to the MVP conversation, going to add in the James Hardens and all those other guys. Now, the way I've looked at it, every single year LeBron James is the MVP of the NBA. They just give it to other people because they don't want everyone to get bored. This year might be one of the first real years since his injury, and he's taken more games off than we've ever seen him take off. This might be one of the first real years where LeBron isn't actually 100% deserving of it because of the injury. So who in your eyes right now, if we had to give the award out right now, who's the MVP?
Probably James Harden. I mean, I agree in that assessment of LeBron, and I don't think he's out of it yet. He can't really miss any more games or any extended stretch after this. Because, I mean, the one thing that is super apparent is you see, what the Cavs were a year ago in the finals to what the Cavs are now, the worst team in the league, what the Lakers were a year ago, like, bad, and what they are now, kind of contenders, right? And that's all through the movement of one player. But he's missed too many games at this point in the season where I could actually say he's been the most valuable player when the other guys have played more. I think with Houston being out of the mix and it looking like their season was spiraling out of control, and Chris Paul getting hurt, James Harden going on that run that he did to bring them back into the contention, I think gives him the nod slightly, because, and the other thing that might work against Antetokounmpo is if Coach Budenholzer gets the Coach of the Year, right? So that if you're saying the coach is responsible in part for the jump in record, then it's taking a little bit of credit away from the player. But right now, I think it's neck and neck between Harden and Giannis, and I'd give the slight edge to Harden.
Right now, what's going on with Harden, we're seeing point guard Harden again, which is unbelievably fun to watch during the regular season. But I think we saw this before Chris Paul came. We saw point guard Harden, and just he's a triple-double machine, scoring 40, 10, 10, unbelievable. But he gets really tired. And anyone would that's not named LeBron get really tired come postseason, and it's going to hurt him. If he has to continue doing this, do we kind of eliminate Houston's chances just because Harden's going to be exhausted?
Yeah, unless Chris Paul comes back healthy. And, at the beginning of the year, he looked like he might have just been getting old.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But maybe the time off also helps him get fresh. Sometimes that can be a little bit of a blessing in disguise, maybe with LeBron too, where these guys who have a lot of mileage on their bodies, they're out for something it doesn't need to be rehabilitated, right? Like it's not like your Achilles is torn and needs to be built back up, or your ACL is blown out and needs to be built back up. You just like pulled something and you just gotta wait for it to heal. And in that time, you're getting some rest. So maybe Chris Paul, gets fresh and comes back a little bit more spry. But if Chris Paul comes back, yeah, I think they're contenders. If Chris Paul doesn't come back as the Chris Paul we've seen, then no.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, when you don't have to get cut open for any other reason, the body responds a lot better. If it's just an internal injury, then they have to cut you open. Even if it's orthoscopic, it takes much longer to get back. So I'm going to ask you a New York centralized question because I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan and I've been ecstatic with what's been going on this season. But looking long term, the Nets are doing it the right way, I think. They're building up. They're in position to be attractive for a very good player. I don't think it's going to be one of the superstars because I don't know if we're a destination like that yet, but a very good player. And the Knicks, they still have Kristaps Porzingis. I know he's restricted free agent. I think they're going to match anything. They'd be crazy not to. And there are certain players that are coming along. Kevin Knox looks like a very good pick. Emmanuel Mudiay looks like he might be figuring the NBA out. Who has a brighter future in New York right now?
Brooklyn. They got much better management. They're not owned by James Dolan. That's really there is. The only thing that can make it the Knicks is Porzingis coming back fully healthy and being a transcendent player. I mean, he might be good enough where he can erase all that. But
now it does seem like James Dolan is letting Mills and Perry really run the basketball operations. He looks like he's being a lot more hands off than he ever has been.
Sure, but I've heard that before.
Yeah, that's true.
The Knicks have won one playoff series since I graduated from high school. We just seen James Dolan, get into a petty war with a friend of mine, a radio host. So,
yeah, we're not going to mention any names, but honestly, if anyone knows, I'm actually sad she backed down. I know why she did, but she's not wrong in anything she said.
Well, I mean, James Dolan.
I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go into murky waters where you don't have to, Robin. I know that it's not worth coming on a little podcast and getting blackballed.
All I'm saying is that I have more faith in the Nets management than the Knicks management, and therefore I would say the Nets have a brighter future basketball-wise. Especially, I think they have more good players right now. I mean, they've got more guys that I like, top to bottom. Porzingis could be the difference maker. That could be enough where it's the Knicks. But that's the only reason I would pick the Knicks.
Yeah, I'm just excited what the Nets are doing in general because we're doing all this without our best scorer in Caris LeVert. I know D'Angelo Russell has the gene to be a legitimate guy, but Caris LeVert going into the league was acknowledged top to bottom, even by Russell, as the best player on the team. And he was the best player on the team in the 14 games he played. He had 2 games near 30 points right away. It was fun to watch, and we're doing all this without our best player and constant injuries. It's a testament to what Kenny Atkinson is doing as a coach. And right now they're playing against the Raptors as we do this podcast on a Friday, and they're only down by 1 against arguably the second or third best team in the East. So it's nice to see, and I'm happy that a guy in the know in basketball like you is picking Brooklyn over the Knicks.
Well, I mean, just look at the roster. Look at the guys that are, LeVert, like you mentioned, but D'Angelo Russell seems like he's coming into his own. I've never been really high on D'Angelo Russell, but he's in a bit of a groove now, and he's always had the ability to score off the bounce. He's always had good court vision. Spencer Dinwiddie is like the prototypical third guard, and has turned himself into a guy who is not afraid of the moment, that's for sure. Kuruc looks like a nice find.
Joe Harris is shooting the lights out.
Joe Harris is a good player. He's not just a shooter. He can finish a little bit. And Allen. So, I mean, they got a handful of guys that just named. Those are all guys that are part of an NBA rotation. They just need to be honest, they just need their one. They need that's the hardest thing to find. But if they find that, they're going to be in business.
Definitely. Now, we're going to talk about your boy. You're a LeBron fan, and I don't blame you because I'm a LeBron fan. And anyone in this generation that isn't a LeBron fan, you're out of your damn mind because
you're kind of a weirdo.
You got to love the fact that we're watching a player that when we're old and gray and we have our great-grandkid or grandkid sitting on our lap, we can go, oh, we watched a guy that you can argue as the best player ever to play the game. How do you not enjoy that as a basketball fan?
I mean, there's some people whose whole, basketball rooting identity came through going against LeBron when he went to Miami. And a lot of people were won over, most same people, but there's some people that still hung on to that. And then on the other side, there's you have a couple sections of fans, you have Michael Jordan, you have LeBron haters who want to tear him down, like that just since that Miami thing have just stayed LeBron haters. You have like Kobe Bryant fans who want somehow Kobe to be on the same level as LeBron. And
Or
then you
Michael.
have like
Kobe was
Michael
never on
Jordan,
either of those.
Michael Jordan stands who, there's a, like, I'm not going to say anything negative about Michael Jordan as a basketball player. It's crazy. But there's that group that will just, like, no matter what, because they feel threatened by LeBron, they're tearing him down. So that's really.
Well, Robin, did you know that Michael was never cocky or never bragged or was always modest? Did you know that about him? Because I sure as hell didn't.
That was just hilarious to me. I can't even, like, get mad at that. That's
like, we make
people were saying Michael Jordan's humble.
The biggest knock on LeBron was he wasn't super confident and he wasn't the alpha. And then when he pulls an alpha move a few times saying, I'm the best player on the planet and this is my team and I'm the greatest of all time. And then Michael going in an interview going, I don't worry about that. No, what do you mean you don't worry about that? That's all you worried about in your career, Michael, was winning. Like, it's laughable, the short memories people have.
Yeah, I mean, but I think, for the most part, LeBron is like he's drama. We've gotten to a point where what we know how to cover him in is drama. Yep. So that you get that. But I think as far as, like, evaluation of LeBron, the vast majority of people are now either saying he's the best player of all time, or you can argue him as the best player of all time. So,
if he's not one, he's 1A. Like, it has to be that way.
So and once you're at that point, the rest is going to take care of itself.
All right. So getting into the real nitty gritty with LeBron, factoring in LeBron to this question, I think the Lakers, before Stephen A. Smith homered about him, before anyone, and I love Stephen A., but he started to homer after they went on a decent run. Before any of that happened, I legitimately was saying that, looking at the makeup of the team, that I thought that the Lakers with LeBron were good enough to make it to the conference finals over every other team to play the Warriors. I still feel like they're going to get there, but are they a challenge to the Warriors when and if they do get there?
I kind of think so, yeah. I think there's some real issues with Golden State this year. If I'm picking any team, I'm still picking Golden State. Let me be clear on that right now.
I think everyone assumes, yeah.
But they got Curry, they got Durant, whatever. We'll see what happens with Boogie Cousins. I think that could go a number of different ways.
We'll see.
Draymond is really struggling. Like, that's a real issue for them. Their lack of depth, we'll see if they address it, is a real issue for them. And the Lakers are constructed in a way where when they're going, they're long, they're fast, they got some bounce. And then they got LeBron on the other side. And
LeBron made a team that likes to run the floor. What a surprise. It's the LeBron model.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's a scenario where they could win the championship this year. But as is, I think, the only team, to be honest, the only team I wouldn't pick them against right now in a series is probably Golden State. Just because that's how much faith I have LeBron in the playoff series. And I think this team is better, for instance, than last year's Cavs team. And that Cavs team, made the finals. Like, the Cavs team should have won game one against the Warriors. So I think that this is a better version of that team with more bounce, with more length, youth, obviously, higher ceiling, depending on where some of these guys get to. Because the other Lakers, most of them, like, the problem with them is people lose their minds about is most of them are good, right? But I don't think any of them are stars.
Kuzma, there's no Kyrie, there's no Kevin Love, there's no Dwayne Wade, there's no Chris Bosh on this team, really.
Yeah, Kuzma's
that's what everyone expects.
A reliable bucket getter, that's for sure. Ingram is the one. I think the expectations on him are gonna hurt his evaluation in a sense, because people thought he could go to the next level, and he takes too many mid-range shots and the like, but he's still real long. He can still handle the ball. He still plays, he's still good on D. Lonzo Ball's very good on D. Just a self-check at times on offense.
Yeah.
So they got a bunch of guys like that. Kuzma's the most reliable guy as far as scoring. But
I love Kyle Kuzma.
Creator.
Yeah. I really think that Lakers fans, they see Brandon Ingram and then they look across the country and they see a guy like Jason Tatum, and they think that's exactly what Brandon Ingram should be. And he's could be that type of player, but he's not quite there yet. I think Tatum has developed a little bit quicker than Ingram.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ingram really would be best suited, to be honest with you, just becoming a better spot-up shooter. So he can play off LeBron better, focus on his defense, focus on the spot-up shooting, and then develop the off-the-dribble game, as the years go by.
Now, that's a good segue, because what the Lakers need right now is they need those guys that can knock down consistent buckets, because LeBron takes basically a whole team when he drives a lane to come at him, and he's looking to kick the ball out 95% of the time. They need those spot-up shooters, and I think that's where the Lakers are weak. They don't have those guys that are going to get you the consistent threes. And I scratched my head because Jamal Crawford was sitting out there for how long? The Suns finally picked him up. I know he's older, but nobody gets cooking besides like Lou Williams off the bench than Jamal Crawford. Why didn't the Lakers go out and get a veteran like that who is a great scorer?
Well, I don't think he's a spot-up shooter, though, right? I mean, I think they kind of built their team a little different than some of the Cavs teams from before, and they probably figured they can still make one more move to bring somebody in. I mean, their shooting's not terrible.
Oh, no, not at all. But I don't think it's Warriors.
No, it's not even what the Cavs were. I mean, the Cavs had a bunch of guys who could knock down the spot-up threes. No, they could use a player like that, but I mean, there are little tweaks that can be made. I mean, I think when they're looking at improving their roster, right now, I would say this is what I would do. I would see if I have some behind-the-scenes commitment from Anthony Davis. You know, he's repped by the same people that rep LeBron, that whole, like, empire. So I would, they might know where he's really leaning. And if they don't have a commitment from Anthony Davis, I would look real hard at trading for Bradley Beal this year if possible.
That would be a great trade. And I even suggested earlier this year that before my boy Joe Harris got going, that the Lakers should have really considered getting rid of Ingram for Joe Harris and players. Because I think Joe Harris is the type of guy that would really do some damage on this Lakers team with LeBron, with his gritty defense, his three-point shooting, and his finishing, and his overall tenacity. Yeah,
sure. I mean, there's a bunch of guys out. Somebody on the trade market right now who I think could help a lot of teams is Jeremy Lin. I always thought he had – I was around for Linsanity. I always thought he had the ability to be a star kind of player.
Yeah.
I know that wasn't the common refrain. And his career went through all these weird ups and downs. And he had an opportunity in Brooklyn. He finally got that opportunity again, and he got hurt.
And when he did play, he played really well.
When he was there, yeah. But that knee injury he had last year made you wonder if he was just done. He's not. He's playing good for Atlanta. So and he's on an expiring deal, and I would have to imagine they're going to want to get some value for him and try to move him. So I think he's a player to watch at the trade deadline that could help a lot of teams.
So I'm going to give a little shout out to my boy, Brandon Scoopy Robinson. He's a writer for Heavy.com. I saw a piece from him today saying that LeBron's injury is going to take a little bit longer than they expected. He's the first person I saw from on Twitter. It's going to take a little bit longer than expected to heal. With that going on, he's getting older. He's aging a little more. How much longer can you see LeBron James playing the game of basketball?
I mean, I would have thought his decline would have started already. I mean, as many years as he's put in, as many postseasons as he's put in. I think, he's done some things to help him as he's aged, where he's not the same speed-wise. He's just not, or lift-wise. But he's a better shooter now, and he's a better shooter from further away. So I think you'll see him expand his game that way. I think you'll see him play bigger at times when he gets a little slower even than he is now. I wouldn't put a cap on it. I would say, given what he's shown, you can expect him to be at top level for this year and maybe another year, another 2 years, something like that. And then probably still a very good player for another 2 years after that, I guess would be – what's that put him at, 36?
He's going to Tom Brady,
38 years old?
He's going to Tom Brady everybody, and every time you think he's done and he's out, he just has a year where he sets a few records, wins a championship, and that's the end of it.
But it's easier to do in football than it is in basketball, at Brady's position, at least. Not in
well, especially now that you can't get hit as a quarterback. Yeah. If they breathe on you, it's a touchdown. They just give it to the Patriots.
And you don't have to rely on your, like running backs, wide receivers. Their quickness is going to play so much in. They're all that stuff. Basketball that plays in. Tom Brady's just got to stand there and throw the ball.
Yeah. You make it sound easy, Robin.
Well, I mean, it's not that easy, but you can see why your decline would be less given how he plays. He gets rid of the ball quick, so it's just really about reads and arm.
Definitely. Okay, so I'm going to put this on you real quick. Who's winning the NBA championship this year? I'm asking you before the All-Star break.
Golden State, but with far less confidence than I would have said before. The way I'm putting it right now is I would have taken Golden State over the field the last 2 years. I would take the field over Golden State right now. That's juicy stuff right there. But all right, Robin, really appreciate you coming on, buddy. Sure, man. Thanks.
All right, so that was Robin Lundberg. You can hear him over at SI Now for Sports Illustrated and also on the Robin Lundberg Show on CBS Sports Radio. This was the Sports Opinions Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Cuesta. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @_Cuesta30. Find Sports Opinions on Twitter at SportsOpinion30, Instagram at SportsOpinions30. Visit the Facebook page and listen to it anywhere you can find a podcast. Once again, this was the Sports Opinions Podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Good night.